Executive producer, Brian Herzog. Presents Bobby Clark. Education, current events, and topics that affect you.
Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk About It. I'm Bobby Clark, your host. And today we're going to be meeting in our first segment with Diane Hanley, who's with Together Baton Rouge. And we're going to be discussing payday lending. Welcome, Diane.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's great having you here. Well, now tell me about payday lending and why we should be concerned.
Well, we are learning all kinds of things about this industry that is teaching us that we need to be very involved in reforming the way that payday lending industry is run in our state. It is draining money from our families and at the tune of $200 million a year.
Now, what does that mean when you say that it's draining $200 million per year?
Well, families go in, they need to take out a loan. They take out a loan for a certain amount of money. They are charged a fee and extreme interest rates. And when that happens, their money that they're paying in interest and fees far outweighs the amount of money that they were borrowing, and that money goes right out of the hands of the Louisiana families.
Give me an example of what you're saying.
So, for example, I met a young man who borrowed $500. It cost $95 for him to borrow that $500, which then went into the principal. So now he owes $595. It is owed back within 2 weeks. So 2 weeks later, he didn't have $595, and they told him that it was no problem. If he paid them another $100, then he could extend the loan and get a little more time in order to pay back the $595. He did that for 6 months, $100 every month, which never went towards the principal, because until he could pay the principal in full, they kept extending the loan or giving him a new loan. There's different ways that they call it, but he had paid $600 towards the loan for $595 and had never touched the principal.
So he basically wound up paying around $1,200 for a $500 loan.
Well, by the time that he paid it out, I believe it was more like $1,500
Wow.
for a $500 loan, yes, before
That's
he could get out of
interesting.
it. Mm-hmm.
How often does this happen? Are there many
Well,
people that get caught in this kind of a situation?
Well, what we have learned is that the average number of loans that people take out in the state of Louisiana is 9 loans per year, because they get themselves caught in this trap where they can't pay it back in time, and so they have to go back and get a new loan to try and cover the old loan, and before the year is out, they've taken out 9 separate loans.
And that could be for one initial transaction?
Yes. So if they took out a loan for, like this young man did, for $500, and they have to cover it with another loan, then you're talking many, many loans for the original $500 that he took out.
Now, is he going back to that same company, or is he visiting another payday lending business to cover the first loan?
Well, different people do it differently depending on the payday shop that they go to. Some of them let them extend or roll over. I'm not sure any of that is the way it's supposed to be, but those that don't allow that, they just go to another payday lender who will be happy to loan them money to pay back a different payday lender. Yes.
This is very interesting. So now I know that Together Baton Rouge has taken this on as one thing that they're very concerned about. What do you propose to make a difference in how it's handled now and how it should be handled, or how Together Baton Rouge would like for it to be handled?
Well, one of the things we learned was about the business model. And part of the business model is to have people come in and get repeat loans one after another. Another piece of the business model is to have extreme interest rates. In the year 2000, the payday industry was written out of the Louisiana usury laws, and so their interest rates can go as high as 700%. So one of the things that we propose is that they have an annual percentage rate of 36% as a cap.
Now, excuse me, let me see if I get this right. You're saying that there was a cutoff to the amount of interest that could be charged to customers.
Yes.
And the legislature took that out and opened it up so they could charge as much as they wanted?
That's right. All the other types of loan industry in Louisiana
Yes.
is under the usury law, except for the payday loan industry. They were written out of our usury laws in the year 2000, and so there is no cap on the amount that they can charge in an annual percentage rate. Now, they do cap it at a certain amount, around 16, 17%, but that's for a 2-week loan. And so if you figured out over the course of a year, the annual percentage rate is in the hundreds. Yes.
This is very interesting. What would be the reason that they would be taken out of the usury law? I can't figure out.
Well,
someone had to do the math on this to know that
Yes.
it would be very injurious to the community.
Yes, that's right. Well, that's one of the reasons why Together Baton Rouge gets involved in things, is because we've been hearing stories from people who have been harmed by this type of business. And so what we've learned is that the legislature hasn't heard from the people yet. And Together Baton Rouge is about bringing this knowledge to the legislature. Before this, all they heard from was the industry, and the industry explained that their business was needed in Louisiana, and the only way they could run their business is if they were written out of the usury laws, and our legislature listened to that. They were the only ones that were speaking to them. So now Together Baton Rouge would like to get involved and tell our legislature how it's actually affecting the people of Louisiana.
So in essence, Together Baton Rouge is a voice for the people.
Well, we are a voice of the people,
Of the
not for the
people.
people necessarily.
Okay.
And that's part of our call, is that we really need people to step forward, to tell their stories, to bring that to the legislature, because that is what is going to make the impact. They need to hear from people. So we are an organization that brings together different institutions, listens to the stories of the people in those institutions, and brings that to the legislatures. But we would like anybody to join us in bringing their voice to the legislature.
And I'm sure there are many voices out there.
We went to one church, and we told the story of what payday lending is doing, and then we asked people to tell their stories. In one church, in one evening, we heard 40 stories from people who were suffering because of payday lending. So we know that the injury is out there in numbers.
That's serious.
Yes. The pastor was really amazed. He knew that people were wrapped up in this payday lending, but he had no idea of the numbers. And that very night, he heard that one of the members of his church was actually contemplating suicide because of the struggles she was having with payday lending, and he had no idea until that night.
Well, we're going to take a break here, and we'll be right back with Let's Talk About It.
Sponsored by. Do you want to boost your student scores on the ACT? We can help. The broadcasting for this television program has been a service of Metro 21. Another Herzog Entertainment production. Do you want to work in films? Go to Herzog.com. Click on Jobs in the Film Industry. Signing up is free. Check us out online at Herzog.com. Are you in an online community? Stay connected with Brian Herzog on Facebook. It's time to make the connections.
and welcome back. Our guest is Diane Hanley with Together Baton Rouge. And we have such an interesting topic. So don't touch that doll. We're talking about payday lending. And Diane, when we left, we were talking about the impact that it's having on the community.
Yes.
And so let's talk some more. Talk about how it affects families with children.
Well, the families that they attract, this business wants to attract families that are working families, making between $15,000 and $40,000 a year. They're usually families with children, and the business model is to attract families that have a steady income because they want to attach to that income and make sure that they are paid on a regular basis.
So if a person is not employed, they are not getting a loan from payday lending.
They are not as likely to get, if they have inconsistent work and they don't have a bank account, they don't have a regular amount of money going into that bank account, they're more likely to be rejected by the payday lending industry. But what we learned is the person that is accepted by the payday lending industry, if they take out that loan, they are 2 times as likely to go bankrupt than the person who is rejected by a payday industry.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yes, 20% of the bankruptcy cases in the city of Baton Rouge that come before the courts are due to payday lending using that kind of industry.
That's serious.
It is very harmful to families. It is harder for a family that takes out a payday loan than if they had no other options. We talk about whether they have options or not, but we've found that in other states where they don't have the payday lending option, that they find other sources that are better for them, and they're better with their finances than when they get caught into this trap that they can get caught in because of payday lending.
I would think when it first happens, they are totally caught off guard.
That's right. I don't think they understand what they're getting themselves into. And the thing is people feel embarrassed or ashamed because they got caught in this. They think it's because they were being ignorant of the way things are run. But it is the payday industry's business model to trap people. That is the point, is to get them caught up in this trap. And so people do not need to be ashamed of being caught by an industry whose pattern, whose business model is to do that to people.
That's their marketing strategy.
Yes, yes. So we even have quotes right from the industry speaking to that. From the Community Financial Services of America, which is a leading payday industry trade association, we have a quote that says, in any large, mature payday loan for portfolio, loans to repeat borrowers generally constitute between 70 and 90% of the portfolio, and for some lenders, even more. So their industry is that their portfolio would be to repeat lenders. They want to have them repeat taking out these loans over and over again. That is the business model.
It sounds so absolutely devious.
Well, the thing is, we're not trying to get rid of this industry. This industry, maybe it does serve a purpose in our community. What we want to get rid of is the predatory practices of this industry.
And how do you do that?
Well, that's when you look at how big is the interest rate, and you charge an interest rate that is reasonable. We think 36% cap would be a reasonable rate at an annual percentage rate. In 2007, the Military Lending Act was put into place, and it put a cap on you cannot give loans for interest rates higher than 36 annual percentage rates to military families. Well, we think that's reasonable.
And what were they charging, or what was the military paying before this act was put in place?
Well, I'm not sure, but it was more than 36%. And
okay.
I think that
so
they were
it's down to 36%, and right now in Louisiana it's 700%.
Well, there is no cap right now.
There is no cap. They can
unless you look at maybe at a 2-week rate. But
okay.
if you do it over annual percentage rate, it goes up to almost 700%. And what we did learn also is that the military, when they looked into this, they realized that $80 million a year was going out of the pockets of our military personnel to fees that were going to payday lending. And so they realized that that will destroy the morale
Yes.
of our military. And so what we looked at in Louisiana was how much is going out of our families' pockets, and we learned it's $200 million a year in one state that is going out of the pockets of our families due to payday lending fees. This generates fees. It doesn't produce anything. It might get them one loan, but then much money comes out of the family's pocket after that. And because of that, we've also learned that there's a net job loss of over 600, almost 700 jobs a year in the state of Louisiana due to this industry.
So why is there a job loss?
Well, that's a good question, because they will tell you, the industry will say, look, we hire people. We have lots of people that we give jobs to, and that's true. But if you think about $200 million going out of our economy, away
Gotcha.
from our families, they're not paying for clothes for their children. They're not paying for educational supplies. They're not paying for medical. All those industries now will not receive that money because it's going to
$200
this
million.
one industry. That's
Yes.
right. And so they will hire less people. Retail would have more jobs if people had more money in their pockets. And so because of this industry, you're losing jobs because people don't have the money available to buy those other things.
So now how does Louisiana compare to other states
What do you mean?
as far as the interest rate that's charged by
Well-
the payday lending industry?
Well, that's an interesting question. That's one of the things we did for research. We went to see what is happening in other states. And so one of the things that we learned was that in Arkansas, the payday industry stayed in their usury laws, and it went to the Supreme Court as far as whether they were working under the usury law. And when they found out the payday industry was not yet working under the usury law, then they had to leave the state because they were breaking the usury law.
So they were just not following the law.
In Arkansas.
In
That's
Arkansas.
right. That's right. So in places like North Carolina, we learned that they started regulating the amount that payday lenders could charge, and families saved over $100 million a year. So in Louisiana, we're losing $200 million.
Yes.
In North Carolina, when they regulated the business, families started saving over $100 million a year because of that regulation. And they also found that borrowers that had been borrowing for payday lending establishments, once they were less available to them, that they were reporting that they had a positive effect on their financial, personal finances.
They became better students of their money.
That's right. That's right. Mhm.
That makes sense.
Uh-huh.
We're going to take a break here, and we'll be right back.
Sponsored by. Do you want to boost your student scores on the ACT? We can help. The broadcasting for this television program has been a service of Metro 21. Another Herzog Entertainment production. Do you want to work in films? Go to Herzog.com. Click on jobs in the film industry. Signing up is free. Check us out online at Herzog.com. Are you in an online community? Stay connected with Brian Herzog on Facebook. It's time to make the connections.
And welcome back to Let's Talk About It, and our guest, Diane Hanley. And we're talking about payday lending. Great subject. So you stay tuned, because either you or possibly someone in your family has been touched by payday lending, and this information may be of help to you. So, Diane, we were talking about the difference in usury laws per different states.
Yes, that's right.
Yes. Now, you had mentioned also something about the difference in the number of payday lending businesses versus some of the other businesses. Tell me about that.
Well, one way for people to understand the how many payday businesses there are in the state is to think about how many McDonald's do you see. So when you think about driving around the country, let's say, there are 12,800 McDonald's. We know that there are plenty of them. But we have learned that the number of payday shops is 20,600. So there are so many more. If you think of how many McDonald's, there are 20,000.
Geez, they're
payday.
coming towards double what McDonald's is.
That's right. And that's part of the business model. You see, part of the business model is to get as many customers as possible. So if you have lots of shops, you have lots of customers. So make the shops very accessible.
Well, I noticed that in Baton Rouge, they're on the main strip, I call it.
Yes.
You know, our main street. So they're there and very, very much available to our...
That's right. So we counted them.
Uh-huh.
We counted them. There are 85 payday shops in the city of Baton Rouge.
85.
Yes. Now, by comparison, too, with McDonald's, I hadn't counted the McDonald's in Baton Rouge, but in Louisiana, the state of Louisiana, think about driving down the interstate. Do you see the exit sign? Is there a McDonald's there? There's lots of McDonald's.
Yeah.
There are 230 of them in the state of Louisiana. Payday shops, there are 936 in the state of Louisiana.
936.
That's one payday lender for every 4,800 people in our state.
That's serious.
57,000 families take out loans from payday lending a year in the state of Louisiana. 23% of our population, that's 6th in the nation.
So, what is the agenda going forward?
Well, we need to get stories. If there are people out there that can tell their story, we need to hear those stories. We've got to get those stories to legislators so they can believe what's going on out in our community. And then what we want to do is put forth a bill, a piece of legislation that would cap the interest rate at 36%. So we're working on doing that. We're also looking at the possibility of capping the number of loans that an individual can take out.
In addition to that interest rate.
Yes.
That makes sense.
So we will see. That's our plan. That's our plan. So if people have their stories, please let us know.
Well, one thing that I hear from legislators is that they don't hear from the people, so they basically don't know what's going on.
That's exactly right.
Yes,
That's right. So we don't want them to only hear from the industry. And
Absolutely.
the industry is speaking to them. We have learned that almost every legislator, probably everyone, has heard from the industry. So we need to make sure that they hear not just once,
Yes.
but many times
Yes.
from their constituents. And they listen to their constituents. They
Absolutely.
really do. It makes a difference. I've been learning that just by talking to my own legislator, that when I speak to him, it's important to him in a way that's different than someone who's paid by an industry to speak to him.
Absolutely. And what I hear is that they're saying we don't hear from the community. And so if they don't hear from us, then they're thinking we're okay.
Yes, and I'll tell you, this Saturday, February 22nd, at 11:30 at the Baton Rouge Community College, the Louisiana Legislative Black Caucus will be meeting for a town hall meeting. That's one place you can go and talk to them directly. So if your legislator is a part of the Black Caucus, it would be wonderful for them to hear from us at these kind of town hall meetings. But also you can call them, contact them, and just let them know that you are wanting regulation and reform on this payday industry.
Absolutely. And I think so often the community thinks that, well, they're not going to listen to me, and I'm just one person. But it's that 1 + 1 + 1.
That's
and
right. That's
it
right.
multiplies, and
Yes.
they do listen.
Yes, yes. And another opportunity for helping the legislators hear your story is on March 18th at Elm Grove Baptist Church. I think at 6:30, we'll be bringing together folks so you don't have to feel like you're alone.
Yeah.
We're going to bring folks all together in that church to let the legislature know that
Yes.
we are numbers. And I'll tell you, I have heard that legislators will say that when they hear from one person, they assume that they probably are about 100 people that didn't talk to them. So when they hear from one, they don't think of you as one. They think of you as 100 people.
That's awesome.
Yes. So think of yourself as joined with many voices.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the interesting part about all of this is that it has to psychologically make the community feel better knowing that they don't have that debt from one loan that they could be looking at paying back over $1,000 for a very small amount that they borrowed. It's not like they went and borrowed several times. They're trying to pay off that one small loan.
Yes, and another thing that we learned is a lot of families are coming forward and saying, my family member got caught up in this, and I didn't know till they owed so much money. And so now the family has to work together to pay back so much more than if the person had originally gone to their family and said, I need $200. Now they're going to their family and saying they're about to take my car, which is worth thousands of dollars, and they owe all kinds of money. And so the family has to dig them out of a much bigger hole. And that's what's happening with the bankruptcy as well. They might have a need for a little bit of money, but once they get wrapped up in this, you're talking about lots of struggles that they begin to have in a much worse case scenario by the time that they're wrapped up in this business.
You know, I just thought about that when you mentioned the car, because there are some signs out there that literally talk about, you know, you bring your title in for your car.
That's right.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
We heard a woman, she told me that her grandson, 19 years old, now what does he know about borrowing money? And that's exactly what he did. He went in and gave him the title of his car for a $200 loan. And she said that he ended up owing a couple of thousand, but his car was worth $10,000. But they were going to take his car over a couple of $1,000 loan. And so his grandmother said she wasn't going to let that happen.
Yeah.
Well, if he'd have asked his grandmother for the 200, now he's asking his grandmother for 2,000, and he's
instead.
about to lose his car.
Well, we're going to take a break here, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Sponsored by. Do you want to boost your student scores on the ACT? We can help. The broadcasting for this television program has been a service of Metro 21. Another Herzog Entertainment production. Do you want to work in films? Go to Herzog.com. Click on jobs in the film industry. Signing up is free. Check us out online at Herzog.com. Are you in an online community? Stay connected with Brian Herzog on Facebook. It's time to make the connections.
And welcome back to Let's Talk About It. Our guest, Reverend Lee Wesley of Community Baptist Church. Do I have that right? Okay. Community Baptist Church. And he's also a member of Together Baton Rouge. And Pastor Wesley, I am so impressed with Together Baton Rouge. And when I heard about the organization, I immediately felt a need to want to check it out first and then see if I wanted to become a member. And then to find out that it had been around for several years. So tell me about the history, how did it come about, and some of the things that Together Baton Rouge has done.
Well, first, thank you, Ms. Clark, for having me on the program and having the opportunity to share with the listening audience how Together Baton Rouge got started, because a lot of folk really don't know. It started with less than 5 African American pastors who had a concern for our community. At the time, we were having an extremely high crime rate in the area and suffering from a high rate of unemployment. So we began to meet together to discuss what we could do as pastors to help our community address these problems. And as we met, it was clear to us that, first of all, the problem was not just a black problem. It was a Baton Rouge problem. And there needed to be a cross-section of individuals, particularly religious leaders, black, white, Baptist, Catholic, Methodist, Muslims, Episcopal, every denomination across the state needed to come together to deal with this problem. So we met first, just a very small group of us. Several things we said. Number one, we don't want to build an organization as a fly-by-night organization, that we come out with a big splash of what we're going to do, and 6 months down the road, it doesn't exist any longer. Second, we want an organization that was not controlled by politics or by government money. Third, we want an organization that would help identify and develop local leaders in the community. So we say, how can we make this happen? So we begin to say, are there some organizations out there that really teach communities how to organize? And I met Perry Perkins, who at the time was employed with the Industrial Area Foundation. Our first meeting was over coffee at McDonald's restaurant on Government Street. And it was from there that we began to build a relationship. Then he met with a larger group of African American pastors, and we started putting it together. We call ourselves a sponsoring committee at first.
Okay.
Once we were solidified as a group, then we start reaching out to the larger community. And actually, we operated for about 18 months before we ever went public. We spent that time building relationships.
And what year was this?
This was about 2011, somewhere around 2011. We spent that time just building relationships
With the
larger
ministers.
community, between the ministers,
Okay.
the ministers and church members, church congregation.
Okay.
So you might have a white congregation that was meeting with a black congregation, just getting to know each other. Then that black congregation would go to the white church and meet with their people around supper, around conversations, just to get to know each other. Then we start having what we call house meetings, where we would meet at somebody's home in the African American community, drawing people from that community, small groups. At one time, we had over 300 house meetings going on across East Baton Rouge Parish, just laying the groundwork for this organization.
It's very strategic.
Very strategic.
Yes.
So, and we learned that through the skills of organizing. Now, if we had not gone through this organizing training, we would not have approached it that way. So thank God for
what
that
was
training.
the organizing? Was there a group that had done it before?
IAF, which is the oldest organizing organization in the country, is the organization that we use.
IAF.
When Barack Obama first ran for president, there was a lot of talk about him working as a community organizer.
Yes.
He was trained by IAF.
Okay.
So we got our training from the same organization that trained our president on community organizing. They're experts
awesome.
at doing it. So we came out with our first public meeting was at Mount Zion Baptist Church when we announced Together Baton Rouge. Over 500 people showed up for that meeting. We got good media coverage, and we have just been moving forward since that day. From that one meeting, other churches, other institutions began to call us and say, we want to be a part of what's going on. This is something positive in our community, and we want to join with you in this effort. And we thank God for the
Now,
success
how many
we've
churches do you have?
had. Right now, there are over 40 institutions
Beautiful.
that are part of Together Baton Rouge. Now, one of the geniuses is in this kind of organization is that there's no one leader. There's not one leader. And the reason for it is this. If you have an organization built around one leader, people will start taking pot shots at that leader to bring him down. And in bringing him down, you bring the organization down. So there is no president of Together Baton Rouge. There are many presidents of Together Baton Rouge. So you're not just speaking about one person or to one person, you're speaking to a mass of people, and it makes all the difference.
And it's so
world.
organized.
Very organized.
I remember coming to my first meeting, and I can't remember who invited me, but it was like the meeting will be an hour and 15 minutes.
Yes.
And I said, okay, I'll plan to stay for 2 hours.
No.
Hour and 15 minutes, everything had been discussed strategically, and it was over.
We learned, number one, honor people's time.
Yes.
Time is valuable. People have so many irons in the fire. They don't give you only a certain portion of their time.
And start walking out.
And walking. So make that time count.
Yes.
We start at 12. We have a meal. 1:30. We're shutting it
Yes.
down. So we tell people who are speaking, you have 1 minute, you have 3 minutes, whatever the case may be. Say it, get it over with. We don't need a whole lot of explanation. Get to the point, and we're going to move on. And that's the way we operate. Now,
And it
there are
works.
planning meetings. You can't do that without planning. So there'll be a small planning meeting prior to any public meeting that we have. We work out the agenda, we work out the speakers, we let the speakers know in plenty of time what we want them to do, the time we want them to do it, and stay on schedule. People respect that. So in our monthly meetings, we have 100, 150 people show up from all across the parish. We meet at churches, white churches, black churches, Baptist churches, Catholic churches, and people come to those meetings. Now, what is
Now,
interesting...
hold that thought.
Yes,
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back in just a moment with Let's Talk About It.
Sponsored by. Do you want to boost your student scores on the ACT? We can help. The broadcasting for this television program has been a service of Metro 21. Another Herzog Entertainment production. Do you want to work in films? Go to Herzog.com. Click on jobs in the film industry. Signing up is free. Check us out online at Herzog.com. Are you in an online community? Stay connected with Brian Herzog on Facebook. It's time to make the connections.
And welcome back. Our guest is Pastor Lee Wesley with Community Baptist Church and also a member of Together Baton Rouge. And when we were talking, Pastor, we were talking about the organization. And
One of the good things
Okay.
that has come out of this is that people from across different economic lines, social lines, cultural lines, are beginning to discover that we have more in common than we have that divides us. It was interesting when we started these across-town meetings. Many of the white people in East Baton Rouge Parish knew the black community only from the news media. So they knew of the crime element, but they didn't know of the people who were dedicated, the people who were working, the people who loved the Lord, the people who wanted to work for the good of the parish. And they start meeting each other
Yeah.
and becoming friends, to the extent that they invite each other to their homes now. And it's out of those relationships that we're able to get something done.
well, I tell you, the camaraderie when you're in the meetings, it's just absolute. It's a group of friends.
Yes, yes.
Everybody's there. They have a purpose. Purpose-driven.
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 I mentioned the house meetings that we had, and this is where the
Yes.
house meetings were. If you have a problem in your community, you call some of your neighbors together in your home on one of the, and we say, let's discuss the problem. Now, the first thing we ask when you bring up a problem, what are you willing to do about the problem? Now, I've been involved in community organization all my adult life. And what has happened over the years, people will come to the community, and instead of teaching you how to address your problem, they'll give you the solution, they'll do all the work, and when they leave, there's still no leadership behind.
Yes.
We like to leave leadership behind. So one of our first public projects was the Bluegrass Bridge. The bridge had been down for several months.
Now that's in Glen Oaks,
That's
right?
in Glen Oaks.
Okay.
And there was no way for emergency vehicles to reach this particular community. So it was a serious problem. One young lady, Dorothy, and I can't think of her last name, from St. Mary Baptist Church, lived in the area. She decided to have a meeting at her house and invited someone from Together Baton Rouge to that meeting. So they're discussing the bridge problem.
Yes.
And our organizer looked at her and said, what are you willing to do about the problem? Would you give some leadership to solving the problem? Well, I've never led anybody before. This is the right time for you to do it. And she became a very, very effective community leader.
That's beautiful.
We ended up going to the city council, and money had already been in the budget to repair the bridge, but nothing was being done.
Are you serious?
Absolutely serious. So when we all show up with our Together Baton Rouge badge on, we're all over the place, and we're very direct in speaking to the council. The bridge needs to be repaired. The bid needs to go out. We need to know when it's going out and give us a timetable when all of this is going to be done. They responded to citizen participation.
Yes.
Organized citizen participation. The bid was let on time. The bridge was completed on time. Now, if that one community with those 5 or 6 people gathering in Ms. Thomas' house, Dorothy Thomas' house, it would not have been done.
Oh, but how it must have made them feel.
Oh, they felt empowered.
Yes.
And the whole idea behind community organizing is to empower people.
Yes.
This is our community. This is our government. Those who sit in those chairs are representing us. They're not representing themselves. Therefore, they are accountable unto us.
Yes.
So we're not pushing ourselves in their business. Their business is
It's
our
us.
business.
And I can imagine with the other projects like the food,
The food access.
the food access in North Baton Rouge.
A lot of folk weren't even aware of the food deserts. Food desert is where people do not have the opportunity to purchase fresh produce. They have to travel for miles out of their community in order to purchase fresh produce. Well, if you don't have a car, and at that time our public transportation system was almost non-existent,
Yeah.
how do you get to do this? In a lot of instances, you don't.
So they're eating nothing but fast food.
You aren't eating healthy. And then they wonder why we're having the health problems
Yes.
that we're having. So we got involved with the mayor's Healthy City, with this Food Access Commission, and it's working quite well right now. Matter of fact, they'll be coming out very soon with a report on what they have done thus far. The East Baton Rouge Parish Redevelopment Authority is also involved in that. So we've called together people from the economic development industry in our city, from the health industry in our city, from the nutrition industry, and all these
Yes.
people are working together to solve the food desert problem.
Because I grew up in that area and there was always a supermarket.
Yes, yes.
And I'm wondering, what happened? Why would there not be a supermarket in this large area right near a major university? It just didn't make sense.
Well, what the merchants would tell you, there's a high crime problem in and near the black community. We cannot find people to work in those areas. So we locate outside of those areas. Well, that's not totally true. We had a store to move in our community up by my church not long ago. When I saw the sign on the door that the building had been closed down for some time, saw the sign on the door that they were applying for rezoning that they could sell liquor. Because it was close to the church, I was concerned. So I went to the store. Nobody was there, and I was reading the sign and getting the numbers off the sign to call downtown to see what kind of permit this really was. And in doing so, the owner of the store drove up, and I told him who I was, and he got very nervous. He said, "Oh, now look, we meet the law. We're far enough away from your church now. We're within the law." I said, "I'm not sure, but I'm going to check." I said, "Matter of fact, I'm going to check right now, and when I come back, I'll let you know if you're in the limits of the law." And he was. And I went back and told him so. I said, "Now, in that you're coming
Hold
here."
that thought. We'll be back in just one moment.
Sponsored by. Do you want to boost your student scores on the ACT? We can help. The broadcasting for this television program has been a service of Metro 21. Another Herzog Entertainment production. Do you want to work in films? Go to Herzog.com. Click on Jobs in the Film Industry. Signing up is free. Check us out online at Herzog.com. Are you in an online community? Stay connected with Brian Herzog on Facebook. It's time to make the connections.
And welcome back. Our guest, Pastor Lee Wesley of Community Baptist, and also a member Together Baton Rouge. And when we left, you were in the midst of...
We're talking about the store that located
Yes.
in the area.
Yes.
Here's the key. Talk to those people who own these stores. Get them to commit to training and hiring people from the community.
Yes.
So instead of using the excuse, we can't find the employees. We have a lot of folk who are unemployed, but who have good minds, teach them the skills, and hire them to do the work.
Yes.
It changes the whole community.
It really does.
Yes.
Well, now let's talk about, we talked about that. There was something else we wanted to speak
The
on.
transit
Transit,
issue,
yes,
yeah.
yes. That is huge.
It is huge. For a capital city,
Yes.
our transit system was absolutely deplorable. Here was the problem. We were the only transit system in the nation without a dedicated source of revenue.
Okay.
We depended on the city parish council every year to appropriate money to operate the system out of the general fund. The general fund could not provide but so much money, and it was always inadequate. Federal funds were available. About 5 years ago, the formula for receiving those federal funds changed, so our transit system began to get even less money to operate. For 2 years, Capital Area Board of CATS tried to pass a dedicated tax, and it failed. Together Baton Rouge got involved with promoting the tax. We held civic academies around the parish to educate people on the tax and why the tax was needed. Our mayor has been saying Baton Rouge is the next great city. Well, you can't be a great city
Without transit.
without transit. So he was on board in helping us to do this. And we literally had thousands of people knocking on doors in every community in this parish that was affected by our transit system. We organized by precincts. And the pundits were saying this tax issue would never pass. It passed, and it passed well because of Together Baton Rouge. If Together Baton Rouge had not been involved, I'm convinced it never would have passed. So now we're seeing some changes, and it takes time.
It does.
We're seeing changes in the transit system. They've had some problems. Those problems were brought to light pretty much because of the pressure that Together Baton Rouge began to put on the bus system. We built into our support an accountability system.
Beautiful.
And we say now, we're going to be at your meetings every month, and we want to hear some progress reports on what you have done. And we began to grade the transit system on their progress. And all of this was transparent. It was out in the public for everybody to see and hear. Well, when you know you're being evaluated publicly, you have a tendency to put your best foot forward. So we're seeing some great changes in our bus system in Baton Rouge. And the first time in the history of this city, our bus system has a dedicated source of revenue.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Now they're able to attract more federal money. Federal money was available. They couldn't get it because it required a match. Sometimes for every local dollar, $3 or $5 from the federal government, but we could not do it simply because we didn't have the match. Now they have the match, and they can attract some of those federal dollars.
I lived in Seattle for many years, and everybody rides transit.
Yes.
When I came back, it was like, oh no, you don't ride the bus here. That's for people who can't get, who just poor. They had all kinds of excuses.
Right.
And I'm like, well, gee whiz, folks who lived outside the city didn't drive into Seattle.
Absolutely.
They parked their cars at that lot. They got on the bus and came into the city.
We have a terrible traffic problem in East Baton Rouge Parish. One way we said, and we said this during the campaign, of solving that problem is to have a transportation system of choice. Not one that you got to ride because you're poor, you can't do any better,
Yes.
but of choice.
Yes.
Well, with the system operating the way it was, nobody wanted to choose to ride the system. When you have to wait an hour, 15 minutes
It won't work.
to ride a bus. So now the goal is to get that wait period down to 15 minutes. More people will begin to ride the bus. They'll use it as a transportation system of choice. We have too many cars
Yes.
on the highway.
Yes.
Yes.
And park and ride really works
Oh,
well.
it works well.
It works
So
well.
we're moving in that
that,
direction.
That would be awesome.
And to a large extent, thanks to Together Baton Rouge.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. I've been just so absolutely impressed with Together Baton Rouge. It's like, it's for the people.
Yes.
It's like a bottom up
Yes, yes.
rather than a top down.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one of the mottos that we use, our faith in action, our democracy in practice.
Yes.
And during the scripture studies that we had, one of them was, what does the Bible say about our civic engagement? What responsibility do we have to each other according to our faith? Are we just learning the Word of God and we got all this head knowledge, but we're not applying it? And through those scripture studies, a lot of people who were not involved with Together Baton Rouge are now involved with Together Baton Rouge. So it's been a great journey.
It's a full circle.
Yes.
It really is. And it offers so much. If you were to, I know that the Together Baton Rouge is driven basically through the church. Is that correct?
Through institutions, that's correct. Yeah.
So it's not only the ministry, it's other institutions?
Institutions. It's
Okay.
primarily faith-based
Faith-based.
institutions.
Okay.
But community-based institutions also can join. And so AARP is a part of it. The Nursing Association is a part of it. So Together Baton Rouge does not have individual memberships. Lee Wesley is not a member of Together Baton Rouge per se. Community Bible Baptist Church is a member.
Yes.
So it's on behalf of that church that I and members of that church are involved in Together Baton Rouge. Now, some people ask, my church, my institution is not a member of Together Baton Rouge, and they may not be interested at this time in becoming a member. How can I participate? Am I locked out because I'm not a part of an institution? And we've looked at that. So now we're opening up where people can become connected as individual supporters of Together Baton Rouge. And that's going to increase our army, if you will.
Yes.
Also, but the other thing it would do, it would say, let's say, for example, Community Bible was not a member of Together Baton Rouge, but one of the church members would go to a meeting and get caught up in what's going on, all this positive stuff. That member is going to come back and say, Pastor, let me tell you about this organization. We need to be a part of it. So individual Christians, church members, will be drawing their institutions to get involved. And we're just delighted about the journey thus far.
Well, I say, from what I've seen, it's a beautiful journey. And our time has ended, but I think that it has been well spent.
Thank you so much for
I
having
have
us.
thoroughly enjoyed having you as well as Diane. It's been just beautiful.
It's been enjoyable. Thank you
Yes.
for allowing us to come and share with you.
Thank you. And to my audience, thank you. And we'll be back in just one moment.
Sponsored by. Do you want to boost your student scores on the ACT? We can help. The broadcasting for this television program has been a service of Metro 21. Another Herzog Entertainment production. Do you want to work in films? Go to Herzog.com. Click on Jobs in the Film Industry. Signing up is free. Check us out online at Herzog.com. Are you in an online community? Stay connected with Brian Herzog on Facebook. It's time to make the connections.
I would like to take a few moments to discuss a topic that is dear to my heart and yours, our children. According to the American College Testing, or ACT, the average ACT score is 21.1. However, the average ACT score for African Americans is 17. In Louisiana, the ACT is required for all 11th graders and all students who will attend college. Also in Louisiana, if a student has a GPA of 2.5 or above and an ACT score of 20, they qualify for TOPS. Your ACT score can also pay for tuition to a community college or vocational school. There is a program available to assist students in attaining a higher score on the ACT. If you would like to know more about the program, please call 888-274-2804. Let me give you that number once more. It's 888-274-2804. And thank you for being a part of our audience today, and we'll see you the next time.
Sponsored by. Do you want to boost your student scores on the ACT? We can help. Another Herzog Entertainment production.